Eleanor Brooks had lived in the same small coastal town in Maine for more than 30 years. Her white wooden house stood close to the sea, worn by wind and time, and so was she. People knew her as quiet, kind, and distant, a retired librarian who spent her days reading, gardening, and walking along the shore. She had loved once, deeply, and lost, and after that loss she learned how to live without expecting anything more. Her life was calm, predictable, and safe, until one early autumn morning changed the rhythm of her days. The sound of a truck broke the usual silence. Eleanor looked out her window and saw a moving truck parked at the empty house across the street. The place had been vacant for years. She watched as a man stepped down, tall, tired, with dark hair touched by stress rather than age. His movements were slow but steady, like someone carrying more than boxes. Eleanor felt a small pull of curiosity, something she had not felt in a long time. She told herself it was nothing, just a new neighbor. Daniel Carter had not planned to move to such a quiet place. He came from Seattle, from noise, pressure, and a marriage that had slowly fallen apart. The divorce left him hollow, and he needed distance from memories that followed him everywhere. When he found the house in Maine, he saw peace, he saw space to breathe. He did not expect connection, he expected solitude. Eleanor baked bread that afternoon. It was something she did when she felt restless. Without thinking too much, she wrapped the warm loaf in a towel and crossed the street. Her heart beat faster with each step. She told herself it was simple kindness, nothing more. Daniel opened the door with surprise on his face, and then a gentle smile appeared, one that felt honest. They introduced themselves, voices polite, careful, but their eyes held longer than necessary. Their conversation was short, but it stayed with them. Daniel thanked her, Eleanor wished him well, and when she returned home, the house felt quieter than before. That night she lay awake, listening to the waves, wondering why a stranger had taken space in her thoughts. The days moved quickly after that. They met again while collecting mail, then while walking their separate paths along the shore. Each time they spoke a little more. Daniel learned Eleanor loved old novels and history. Eleanor learned Daniel worked in design and had once dreamed of opening a small studio. Their talks were light, but something deeper grew underneath, like a quiet understanding. Eleanor noticed how Daniel listened, not just politely, but fully, as if her words mattered. She had not felt that in years. She also noticed her reflection more often, the silver in her hair, the lines around her eyes. Doubt followed every warm feeling. She reminded herself of the difference between them, of time, of what people would say. She tried to pull back, but something kept drawing her forward. Daniel felt it too, though he tried to ignore it. Eleanor's calm presence soothed him, her voice slowed his thoughts. With her he did not feel broken or rushed, he felt accepted. But fear walked beside that comfort. He knew the world was not kind to stories like theirs, even if nothing had been spoken yet. He worried about crossing a line that could not be erased. One afternoon, rain trapped them under the same porch during a sudden storm. They laughed at the timing, shared stories of childhood, of mistakes, of hopes left behind. Eleanor spoke about losing her husband years ago, her voice steady, but her eyes held old pain. Daniel spoke about his divorce, about feeling like he failed. The air between them shifted, honesty settled where small talk once lived. When the rain stopped, neither moved right away. Silence wrapped around them, heavy but not uncomfortable. It was the kind that held meaning. Eleanor felt her heart open in a way that scared her. She stepped back first, wished him a good evening, and walked home with trembling hands. That night she told herself it was wrong to feel this way, that kindness could be mistaken for something else. She promised herself she would create distance. She had protected her heart for too long to risk it now, especially for something that might never exist beyond quiet talks. Across the street, Daniel stood at his window, watching Eleanor's light turn off. He felt pulled in two directions, one toward safety and isolation, the other toward a connection that felt rare and real. He did not know which choice would hurt less. As autumn deepened, the air grew colder, leaves fell, and the town watched quietly. Some noticed the growing closeness, others only sensed a change. Eleanor and Daniel did not speak of what was forming between them, but every look, every shared moment, carried weight. Both knew something had begun, even if neither knew where it would lead, and that uncertainty hung over them, waiting. Just as the first real test drew closer, Eleanor woke to the sound of rain tapping against her window, a quiet rhythm that matched the unease she carried that morning. Daniel had not waved from his porch, had not come over, and the usual warmth in the street felt absent. The town, as small towns do, noticed their closeness and whispered, some with curiosity, some with judgment. Eleanor heard fragments at the grocery store, casual remarks about age and appearances. Daniel felt the weight too, in the cautious glances of neighbors and the polite distance of people who could not understand. Yet despite the quiet pressure, neither of them stepped back. The tension only made their moments together more fragile and precious. One evening, after a long walk by the shore, Daniel stopped by Eleanor's house. The wind tugged at his coat and hair, and he looked at her with honest eyes. The conversation began cautiously, his voice low, almost unsure. He admitted his fear, said he worried people would judge, said he did not want to hurt her. Eleanor listened quietly, the sea wind filling the pauses. She had expected this, but she also knew the truth. Her life had already taken so much from her, she would not allow fear to take this chance at warmth. She told him that love did not come with rules, it came with courage, and sometimes courage was enough to face a world that did not understand. Their days slowly wove together, shared breakfasts, quiet afternoons with books, long walks where silence spoke louder than words. Daniel found himself laughing more, feeling lighter. Eleanor felt the weight of loneliness lift in small, steady ways, each moment a thread binding them closer, yet shadows lingered. The past never stays quiet, and Daniel's ex-wife, unaware of the quiet peace he had found, appeared one afternoon at his doorstep, her anger and confusion obvious. She accused him of mistakes, of losing direction. Her words pierced deeper than he expected. Eleanor heard him on the phone, soft apologies laced with frustration, and felt the old fear rise. The town's whispers seemed louder, the safe rhythm of their lives suddenly unsettled. That night, Daniel sat alone in his empty house, the walls unfamiliar and cold, the boxes he had carried with care now seemed like weights. He wondered if this connection with Eleanor could survive scrutiny and doubt. Memories of failure whispered in his mind, yet even in the quiet, he felt a pull toward her, toward the warmth she offered. Across the street, Eleanor sat by her window, sipping tea, listening to the distant waves, wondering if the doorbell would ever ring again, if the smile she had grown fond of would fade. Her heart ached in ways she had forgotten, longing mixing with uncertainty. The following morning, the town resumed its ordinary rhythm, but whispers lingered in the cafe and the library, neighbors noticing the subtle glances, the quiet laughter from Eleanor's porch, Daniel's cautious smiles. It was a delicate dance, each waiting to see if the other would step back. Eleanor found herself tending her garden more, not to distract, but to anchor her thoughts. Daniel kept busy arranging his home, organizing his life, trying to balance caution with the undeniable pull toward her. Every decision weighed heavier when her name was in his mind. One afternoon, Eleanor invited Daniel over for tea, a gentle suggestion, a test of comfort and trust. He accepted, nervous but hopeful. The conversation flowed easily, stories of childhood, of past mistakes, of hopes for simpler days. Eleanor shared memories of her late husband, not with sorrow but with lessons learned. Daniel spoke of his divorce, of starting over, of fear and courage intertwined. As they spoke, the storm outside mirrored the storm inside them, uncertainty and longing mingling. Yet in those words, a quiet bond grew, each hearing the other in ways they had not been heard for years. When the rain stopped, neither moved immediately. Silence stretched between them, heavy yet comforting. Eleanor felt the ache in her chest, the desire to step closer and risk heartbreak. Daniel felt the same, tension and anticipation held them in place. Eleanor eventually stepped back, excusing herself, leaving Daniel with the memory of her calm strength. He watched her go, knowing the risk of this connection was real, yet feeling drawn closer. Days passed, the town continued its quiet observations, some supportive, some skeptical, but Eleanor and Daniel's bond became harder to ignore. Simple gestures, shared meals, waves from porches, long conversations by the shore grew in meaning, each act carrying courage, a declaration that they were choosing each other despite fear and judgment. The connection deepened, not rushed, not hidden, but steady, like waves shaping the shore, small moments layering into something significant. Evenings became markers of hope and tension, the porch light across the street signaling safety and presence, a moment to breathe. Daniel sometimes lingered too long in her presence. Eleanor sometimes found herself listening for footsteps before the night fully settled. The world beyond their small bubble did not matter as much as the quiet affirmation they offered each other, courage meeting patience, hearts learning to trust again. Then, one afternoon, Daniel stood in his doorway, unsure whether to knock, knowing the risk but feeling the pull of honesty and desire. Eleanor, in her house, felt the same, waiting, wondering if the bond they had built would survive scrutiny and doubt. Both realized that connection was fragile yet undeniable, that fear would always exist, but love, real, honest, patient, was stronger. The storm of the ex-wife's presence, the town's whispers, the shadows of past loss all remained, but the foundation between them had shifted, solid and true, forming the quiet promise that whatever came next, they had proven their courage, and the choice to embrace love despite fear was theirs alone. Days turned into weeks, and the chill of early winter wrapped around the coastal town. Eleanor's house smelled of old wood and fresh tea, the sea wind rattling the windows, and Daniel's absence during those days left a quiet ache in her chest. She kept busy, tending to her garden under frost, arranging books, walking along the shore, but nothing filled the space where his presence had settled. Every sound of a distant car made her pause, hoping it was him, yet fearing it might not be. The town continued its watchful eyes, whispers still floating in cafes and shops, some curious, some critical, yet Eleanor found a quiet defiance growing inside her, a determination that her heart would not be dictated by judgment. Daniel, meanwhile, felt the weight of those days acutely. The silence between them was heavy, filled with questions and what-ifs. He moved carefully, hesitant to overstep, yet each morning he woke thinking of Eleanor, her laugh, the way her eyes softened when she spoke of books or memories. He realized he had never felt such clarity before, that love, rare and unexpected, was worth the risk. He wrestled with his fear of judgment and the echoes of his past marriage, but ultimately, he knew retreating would only leave emptiness behind, and so he made the choice to act, to show Eleanor that the bond they had built mattered more than the doubts that lingered. One evening, as the sun dipped low into the horizon, turning the sky golden and pink, Daniel found himself standing at Eleanor's porch, hesitating only briefly before lifting his hand to knock. His heart raced, the weight of weeks of silence pressing against him. When Eleanor opened the door, their eyes met, and in that instant, the distance melted. No words were needed at first, the warmth in her gaze telling him everything he needed to know. He stepped inside, carefully, reverently, as if stepping into a fragile world he never wanted to break. They spoke gently at first, sharing the ordinary details of the day, the small routines that built comfort, yet beneath the conversation was a pulse of longing, honesty, and hope. Daniel admitted his fear, how he had doubted himself, worried about the past and the town's judgment. Eleanor listened, her expression calm but full of understanding. She reminded him that love never comes with guarantees, but it does ask for courage and choice. She had chosen him, she told him, and that choice had carried more weight than any whisper or doubt could carry. After that evening, their connection deepened, not in grand gestures, but in steady moments, shared breakfasts, reading together by the fire, quiet walks where the wind carried their laughter, and the small, knowing smiles across the street that spoke volumes. They faced the town together, some neighbors accepting, others skeptical, but Eleanor and Daniel were unshaken, grounded in the reality of their bond, the way they had built trust, honesty, and respect into each encounter. The world beyond their porch became background noise, secondary to the life unfolding in shared moments. Evenings became the markers of their courage, the porch light symbolizing presence, warmth, and choice. Daniel would sometimes linger, talking about hopes for the future. Eleanor would listen, offering quiet insight, gentle wisdom from a life lived fully. Their conversations were layered with emotion, humor, memory, and honesty, creating a tapestry of understanding and connection that neither had anticipated, yet both had come to rely upon as the rhythm of their new life together. The uncertainty of age, loss, and judgment faded in comparison to the clarity they found in each other. The town's whispers eventually quieted, replaced by quiet respect or acceptance, and though some eyes remained skeptical, Eleanor and Daniel no longer sought validation from others. Their bond was rooted in shared courage, honesty, and love that refused to be diminished by time or circumstance. They discovered joy in small things, a shared cup of tea, a favorite book passed across the table, a walk along the frost-covered beach. Moments that held intimacy not of passion but of recognition, of being fully seen, fully understood, and fully chosen. One chilly morning, Daniel brought a small canvas and paints to Eleanor's porch, suggesting they try painting the sunrise together. She agreed with a smile, and as the sky turned pale gold, they worked side by side, laughter and quiet words blending with the sound of the waves. It was a simple act, yet profoundly symbolic, the act of creation, togetherness, and shared vulnerability. Eleanor noticed how his hands shook slightly when he painted, and Daniel noticed the way she paused to study the horizon, both finding beauty not only in the scene before them but in the presence of one another. As winter deepened, Eleanor and Daniel celebrated the small holidays, shared stories of past traditions, and slowly merged routines. The line between neighbor and companion disappeared, replaced by partnership and affection, yet always tempered by respect, care, and the slow, deliberate patience that had defined their connection from the beginning. They learned the value of timing, the power of choosing again after loss, and the quiet strength of love that faces scrutiny, doubt, and the passage of time without wavering. By the time the first snow fell, the world around them had changed little, yet their lives had shifted entirely. They walked together along the frozen shore, laughter echoing against the cliffs, their breaths forming clouds in the cold air, and in those moments, age, judgment, and past pain became irrelevant. Eleanor's hands, lined and steady, clasped Daniel's warm and calloused ones, a symbol of mutual choice, commitment, and recognition that love, true love, does not follow rules of age or expectation. It grows where courage, honesty, and hearts willing to meet create space for it. In the end, they proved to themselves and, quietly, to the town, that love was neither bound by age nor limited by fear. It was a deliberate act of choice, a steady dedication, and an open heart. They faced life together, sometimes challenged, often whispered about, yet unshaken, each day layering new memories, shared joys, and quiet comforts. Their story was not one of grand declarations but of small, Consistent acts that built a life worth living. And as they sat together on the porch one evening, watching the snow settle on the cliffs, they knew that love, patient and courageous, had chosen them both, and nothing else mattered as much as that truth.